Thank you all for joining us. We have an amazing set of speakers today. It's going to be wonderful. And I hope you all came with lots and lots of questions. Want to remind everyone to select a language. Please do, particularly you English speakers. We are offering interpretation in both English and in Korean. And to find how to select a language, you go down to interpretations and then click on the language that you would like. But for those English speakers, you have to pick a language or else you will not be able to hear when there is any interpretation in English from other languages, okay? So thank you all for joining us. I just want to give you all a quick update on something that I know everybody cares about and you've been part of, and that is the bill that Disability Voices United is co-sponsoring with a range of other organizations called Senate Bill 1092, which reforms the fair hearing system. I know a lot of folks were really active in making phone calls to get that bill passed, and we so appreciate it. The bill is not passed yet. We got through our first committee, and that committee, or the first two committees, the Judiciary Committee and the Human Services Committee. And now it is going to be folded into what's called the budget process. So we have our ideas, and then DDS has some different ideas than we do, and some of them are similar. And so we are going to, we are hoping that folks will join DDS, and I'll at some point put it in the chat after I get done talking. DDS is having their own public meetings about their proposals next week. We hope that all of you will register and join them. Oh, no, not next week, they're tomorrow. Geez, they're tomorrow. They are at 11 to 12 in English and 12 to 1 in Spanish. I will put the links to be able to register for that in the chat. We encourage all of you to join, to listen what DDS is saying, and to ask any questions or express any concerns that you may have about their proposal, because it's very important. And so let us get started. We have, as I mentioned, some great speakers to talk about, we focus so much of our time on adults, and half of people in the regional center system are children under the age of 18. And so we really want to spend today talking about how to encourage and nurture self-determination among adults, among transitioned age to adulthood, as well as children from the youngest possible ages. And we have amazing people to talk about it today. So the first person that I'd love to introduce is Amy Hanreddy, Dr. Hanreddy, who is an associate professor of special education at Cal State University at Northridge in their special education division. Amy is like one of the most forward-thinking people I know in the education field. And that's saying a lot, because it's hard to be really visionary in that field sometimes. So she comes up against a lot of traditional thinking when it comes to special education. So thank you, Amy, for joining us. We so appreciate it. And I'm going to let you are a co-host, so you can share your screen or do whatever you need to do to make your presentation.
Well, thank you, Judy. Let me see your pictures. Let me fix that on my screen there. So Judy, I feel like you give me a lot more credit than I deserve. I feel like this is all part of everything I've done is like this learning process, and we just continue to learn. And I think that the topic of self-determination really is a perfect example of that, because so I've been involved in different conversations, some hosted by Disability Voices United around guardianship and supported decision-making. What I mean is alternatives to guardianship. And I think that when I was working as a special education teacher, I certainly didn't really understand all of the issues and implications associated with guardianship. And in particular, I hadn't really thought through, if we have this idea that individuals, all of you, individuals with disabilities should, of course, be the drivers of their own lives as adults, that we need to be preparing everybody in order to do that, right? So I think that when I learned about self-determination in becoming a special education teacher, I will be honest that I don't think I had a clear understanding of what self-determination was. I think I thought sometimes that just offering choices, I was doing a good job, right? And especially, I think over the last couple of years, I really learned a lot and regretted a lot of things that I've done in the past. So that's what I mean when I say this is always a process. And so a lot of this focus more recently on self-determination is really coming from this premise that we need to be starting from the very beginning in helping people to be the drivers of their own lives and not waiting until we're just starting to think about leaving the school system in order to help people to gain that control over their lives. And so I've been really lucky, especially over this last year, because we got this grant from the State Council on Developmental Disabilities, where we're working collaboratively with Chime Institute and Wish Charter School in Los Angeles to really start thinking through exactly like, what does all the research say? What does the disability community say? And how can we really start to put some concrete practical systems into place in starting from preschool, going through high school, that really focus on self-determination. And so I want to spend just the next couple minutes, I know I don't have too much time, really sharing some of the things that we've been thinking about related to self-determination in school-age students. And then I'm really eager to hear everybody else's ideas and learn from them, and then to have a discussion after that. So I like to start with definitions, mostly because, and I saw that Allison Gray is here, and she has really helped a group that I'm a part of to be very clear on distinctions, because we have this statewide program called Self-Determination, and that is really focused on making choices and controlling services. But there's also this broader umbrella concept that is not specific to California, not specific to regional center, that is all about self-determination much more broadly. So there's a couple definitions here, and really being self-determined is all about being the causal agent in one's own life. And that means that causal agents have the skills and attitudes that allow them to make things happen in their own lives. So, and as some examples, people who are self-determined self-initiate, self-regulate their actions to solve problems, make decisions, and set goals that impact their lives. So what we've been thinking about is, so first, why is this important? And why is it important that we start early in considering self-determination? So we already know that our current school systems are not the most effective in teaching individuals to be self-determined and really to provide the opportunities that they need to develop self-determination, because it has not been a priority within our school system, and especially within special education systems. And so we have poor outcomes upon leaving the school system. Despite the fact that we know self-determination skills really improve individuals' abilities to be more autonomous and interdependent, really taking that active role in their lives. Notice that I didn't say independent, because we know that many people will still benefit from support, but should be able to be the drivers of that support as much as possible. We know that people become more self-determined as they identify their own interests and preferences, when they set and they work towards goals, engaging in problem solving, decision-making, and advocating for themselves. So as much as these are critical skills for people with disabilities, they're also critical skills for all of us. We're actually working on self-determination with our teacher candidates in having them set goals for themselves. professionally and working towards those goals. So these are things that we need to learn and practice for all of us. In inclusive settings, this is a great opportunity to work towards these skills for absolutely everybody. So I said that I think I had a really poor understanding previously of what self-determination is, and really looking at the broad range of skills related to self-determination, I know has really helped my team to start to think more critically about all of the ways that we can be embedding opportunities for students to start to learn and practice these skills from very young ages. So I encourage you to just kind of look at that list for a second even and start thinking about what are the ways in which I do these things now? What are the ways in which my loved ones are engaging in these things? And are there areas in which maybe one or two of them is something where maybe we don't have as many opportunities? And that's exactly what we're looking at for our students, is really thinking about, okay, maybe we're doing okay in some of these areas, but what are some things that we can really focus on a little bit more? So Judy mentioned that school systems are not always the most conducive to supporting just progressive practices in general related to serving students with disabilities. And just as one example related to special education systems, we tend to provide lots of support, lots of I want to say control over people with disabilities. And so this is just one example. This is a cartoon that says, it's from Michael Giangreco, and it says, "I feel like I'm being followed." And the friend says, "You're just being paranoid." And the caption says, "The shadow knows. Rodney's suspicions were accurate. Unbeknownst to him, a paraprofessional had been assigned to be his shadow." So if we think about things that we do in the interest of support that can actually serve to take away students' opportunity to have the same opportunities to be as autonomous and make their own choices compared to students without disabilities, we really have to be looking carefully at those systems. So we have a lot of barriers to self-determination in schools, and I'm just going to highlight two here. One is that emphasis on compliance that is higher in special education settings compared to other settings in schools. And then the second I want to highlight is low expectations. Those two things together, I think, really often serve to take opportunities away from students with disabilities in particular. And I will share these slides. As soon as I'm done talking, I'll share the slides. So if you want to look through some of the other information that's on there. So when we talk about supporting self-determination in schools, we've really expanded on some existing work from the University of Kansas and looking at this as a cycle. So just like we do with all other skills that we identify and teach in school, we need to identify self-determination skills to teach, right? So I put that little list there as a cheat sheet for us to remember the different types of skills we might focus on. We focus on teaching those skills and providing lots of opportunities to use and practice those skills all the time. We figure out what supports or accommodations students need to practice those skills. Can we give them checklists? Can we give them reminders? How can we really embed those systems to allow students to have more control within those school settings? And then we evaluate progress, we make adjustments, and then we continue the cycle. So it's really the same cycle that we use for teaching all skills, but really raising self-determination as a priority. We've really identified some key areas for addressing self-determination in schools. So one is, just like I described, those skills taught year-round. Another is really increasing the student participation in the IEP process, making sure that families and educators are trained about self-determination. So not just that statewide system, but really that broader definition and what it means. And that we are also embedding that opportunity to be first aware of the disability community on the part of educators and families, and then that importance of learning from the disability community. I've had lots of conversations with individuals who say that they don't have examples of adults with disabilities who are living self-determined lives. And we want to make sure we give lots of opportunities for that. So I'm going to post this in the chat. I want to draw your attention to this slide because we've really worked on identifying example goals that could be included in student IEPs. And we've really been thinking about students with a broad range of support needs. So from students with mild to extensive support needs in schools, we want to make sure that there's lots of examples that would address self-determination for that full range of students. And I don't want you to think of this as a goal bank where you're like pegged into examples of goals, but we always feel like it's helpful to have examples to build from. And we found that as a team, the more examples we came up with, the more creative we got with how it could look for an individual student. So that's why that resource is there for you. And again, I'll drop that into the chat so you can see some examples. We've also looked at different ways that self-determination can be embedded within specifically the IEP process. And rather than thinking about just students, leading their own IEPs, which is a great match for some and not a great match for others, we really want to think about the whole process. So in what ways can students be engaged and involved before the IEP? From something, I think about 3-year-olds making an invitation to their team members and inviting them to the meeting, right? So that helps to create an awareness of what, that these people are involved in a meeting, that this meeting is happening. They might visit for part of the time. They might, say hello. And depending on the student, that might be it. But we start to build that awareness and engagement from the beginning and then continue to build on it throughout their school years. So there's some ideas for involvement during the IEP, but then also throughout the year, because the IEP is actually a year-long cycle. So just to wrap up, I know it's like a lot of information really fast, but here are some things that I really think we should be focusing on related to self-determination in schools. So first, we cannot separate self-determination from communication support. Those two things go hand in hand. I saw Ryan Duncanwood is here. We are colleagues on our TASH Communication Access Committee work group. And we've done a lot of work connecting self-determination with communication support for all students. Making sure that students are included in their IEPs before age 14. So we're building that awareness and involvement from the beginning, from their first IEP. Starting to focus on self-determination skills. So making sure that every student is working towards some target self-determination skills and really thinking about what's most important and relevant for that student, and hopefully engaging the student in the process of helping to choose what those skills will be. Working on embedding practice on those skills every day in real situations throughout the day. Including students in all conversations that involve them. So really starting to embed that practice, and that's a huge shift in the world of special education to actually include students in conversations about them. And then finally, really helping families and students to meet and learn from adults with disabilities. Because if we want them to start having a vision for the future, then they need those role models to do that. Okay. I think I already went over my time. I tried, but that's my overview, and I'm looking forward to hearing from everybody else.
Oh, that was amazing, Amy. And as we said, you will get copies of the slides. People love to get copies of the slides. And thank you, Ryan Duncanwood, for putting the Chime Institute in the chat. People were asking, who are you with, Amy, and all that kind of stuff. So thank you. That was fantastic. I think I'm going to go next to Darlene, and then we'll go to Stephen afterwards, if that's okay. So Darlene Hanson, everybody knows Darlene Hanson as our Director of Communication Rights Projects at DVU. Darlene is actually here today to talk about what she's been working on the side for a very long time, which is to develop this incredible app, which I hope everyone will be interested in. And she's here to talk about specifically how to increase sort of good, thank you, for people who are non-speaking or minimally speaking. And so go ahead, take it away, Darlene. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Judy. I'm going to share my screen here real quick and slideshow. Here we go. Okay, hi. Yeah, I've been thinking about critical thinking skills, which is perfect because I was so happy because Amy's talking about self-determination. And I think that for me, my observation is that a lot of times when we get to that point where we start saying, hey, your person should be making decisions for themselves, there's a panic on people's face, like, what are you talking about? And I think that's because that's a good panic because we haven't actually prepared people. So what I've done today is I just put together some ideas to just kind of get us thinking about how, because it sounds overwhelming. It sounds like you go from choices to what? He's making a decision about his life. But there's steps, and I want to walk us through. Doesn't have to be that scary. Okay. I'm thinking of individuals here who have communication differences. Maybe they have limited communication skills. Maybe they have, maybe they don't have any speech and they're using AAC, or maybe their communication isn't reliable. That profile tends to make us a little nervous when it comes to getting out there and making those big decisions. So let's just think about it. What is critical thinking in the first place? It's the ability to look at things, facts, and situations and understand the problem. But we don't start teaching this to a person when they're 18, if you think about your own life, right? You don't start learning to think critically when you're 18. You start, like Amy's saying, in preschool. And general education walks us through this. So why is it so important? Is because you have to participate in this process. You have to learn, you have to explore. And when we question whether or not someone's able to make these, we're actually thinking about, I don't think he knows how to do this, okay? So the critical thinking is I think the piece, whoops, gosh, this happens every time I present with you guys, that I get cuckoo on my, nowhere else does this happen, I promise. And that's not it, hang on, gotta get back. Oh my God, hang on one second. I'm gonna exit full screen. I'm gonna try this again. All right, sorry. It's a DVU thing. Okay, so where does it fit in education? Critical thinking skills are developed in general education curriculum. It is part of the general education curriculum, but are they part of your child's education? That's the question, okay? Let me try one more time. There. So what is it? In general, you're looking at, does the person have observation skills? And I'm just going to list this and then we're going to talk about how easy or difficult this could be. But observation skills, do they see and notice things, right? Can they analyze what they're seeing? Can they infer? That means draw conclusions from the information. Can they communicate what they know? And can they problem solve? This is being taught in your general education classrooms. But I don't think, I mean, from what I've seen, it's not really part of how we look at special education. We look at special education as choice making, okay? And yes and no questions. But so let's talk about bridging the gap because that's really where it all lies. Observation, think about labeling things versus describing things. If we're teaching people vocabulary words, why not teach them describing words, right? They don't have to just learn nouns. They don't just have to learn community signs. Teach describing words just as easily. Is it big? Is it little? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it more? Is it less? Is it important? Is it not important? Is it something you like? Is it something you don't like? Okay, there's no reason why any person can't be experiencing those opportunities. So observation is just labeling and describing. Okay, so your person can do that. If we set up a communication system that allows them to participate in this conversation, that's really key. Social questions, analyzing things, you got to be able to ask questions. When we're in special education, I'm a speech and language pathologist, so I know this to be true. We tend to think of questions as a social experience. Ask your friend what they like to do. Ask your friend what they did last night. Ask your friend where they want to go this weekend. Okay, that's good. I'm not saying don't do that, but let's build it out. Let's start talking about informational questions. What else do you need to know about this? Do you have enough information? You can put together communication boards that allow this to happen. It could have a who, what, where, why on there. And you could say, what kind of question would you ask in this scenario? Well, that would be a what question. If you wanted to know what's happening in the event, that's a what question. If you wanted to know who the people that are involved, that's a who question. So start teaching that information, that question words go with information, not just categories. I'm rushing through this and I apologize, but I just wanted to kind of like spark your interest here. Inferences are drawing conclusions, okay? Teach your person to draw conclusions. So what do you think this all meant in a book? What do you think happened? What do you think we're talking about here? Have choices out there that show the person that they can draw conclusions. Teach expressive language, which I think everybody wants to do. So go ahead and keep doing that, of course. Teach a rating scale. Okay, you can have, I like to use 1 through 5 personally, because I use 1 as not a thing I want. 5 is, yay, that's awesome. And 3 is in the middle. And 2's, it's in between 1 and 3. I'm not sure which one I want. Because you get too many gray areas, it gets confusing for all of us. So I like 1 through 5 personally, but start teaching, rate your thoughts. You could rate your thought on how was that vacation we went on? How was that meal we ate? Just, you don't do everything all of the time, but you start exploring different opportunities. Then you're getting to where you're an adult person and people are saying, do you understand this topic? 1 is, I have no idea what you're talking about. And 5 is, yeah, I'm with you, keep going. And 3 is, I think I have I need a little more information. You know, you can label these things because the person will be familiar with this whole process of rating thoughts. This one I think is really important. Give feedback. I do not think we give feedback enough to people with communication differences for sure, but I don't think we give feedback to people with developmental disabilities. I think our education system is set up in a way that we think of ourselves as we're teaching you something and that's just what you're going to know. And if we talk about it too much, you're going to get confused. And I don't see that to be true. Give feedback. Why didn't that work out for you? What could we have done differently? What do you think is going to happen next? Why would you pick that? Okay, give that your math problem was wrong. What did you do wrong? Well, you counted too fast. I mean, give feedback to people, and because that's where we do all of our learning. All of us do. This is probably the tie to give feedback. People in special education, so I think I'm not going to say 100% of the time, but more than often than not, they do not get the opportunity to say, I don't know. When you say, I don't, if you just think that you can just put it on a communication board and the person's been in a situation where there's all the error correction process happening and all of that, I don't know is not even an option. Okay, but it is for all of us. We need to be completely comfortable saying, I don't know, if you really are looking at autonomy, because that's when you're going to know that your person is able to make that decision of, I don't have an answer for this. And that's, if I said, somebody says, I don't know to me, I'm going to say, well, let me tell you a little more, right? It's really an important piece. So let people fail every once in a while. I'm not in dangerous situations, of course, but through that fail, fail is kind of a harsh word. I couldn't think of a better word, but through the mistakes. Okay, I guess I could say mistakes. Let mistakes happen every once in a while, because then you go back and you give the feedback and you regroup and you try a different answer. And all of that is how we all learn to make better decisions. And if we choose, as the communication other person in the conversation, to let these kinds of interactions happen, then we're helping the person learn how to do the critical thinking skills that are going to go towards their self-determination. And I mean, I'm throwing it at you really fast, but there's lots of ways and lots of opportunities that we can create to do this if we don't keep life so black and white for individuals. So see, that's what happens, and then it doesn't work. One second. There we go. Okay. So even if you're using AAC, don't rule out, oh, excuse me. When you have someone who doesn't have the speech to keep up with this kind of situation, the kind of interactions that I'm talking about, don't rule out AAC. And I think I wrote this in the chat. That means augmentative and alternative communication. Sometimes people can't say everything that they know. Okay, so it doesn't mean they have to have a communication device necessarily. I mean, some people do, but even if your person has, if you find yourself saying, well, his communication skills are kind of limited, you can use visuals. Okay, you can augment in all kinds of ways. You can write things out, you can use pictures, however you need to do that, but you're augmenting so that your person can participate in a way that their speech doesn't allow them to do. Okay, so don't get hung up on speech is an act that happens. It's not parallel to communication. Okay, communication is an exchange of information. So even if you don't have the speech skills to communicate everything that you are thinking in your head, an alternate mode can help you participate in those conversations. And then you as family and teachers will feel more comfortable with the fact that, no, he does tell me he knows these things, and here's how he does it. So don't rule out AAC, even if you have speech. Of course, if you don't have speech, you better get AAC. But if you have speech, you still might benefit from some extra support there. So put that in place. So as Judy mentioned, I'm with Disability Voices United, but I also have a company called Kindred Communication. We do virtual coaching, but we have this new app. And on the app, I have a whole series on critical thinking and on communication, training communication partners and person-centered planning and all kinds of different things. So feel free to check out the app at, there's the link right there, app.gokindred.com. And it's, the idea of the app is that it's going to be it's like going to a conference. You're going to get information. And then you get time, there's community, so you get to socialize. And then there's also going to be scheduled live question and answer periods where myself or other professionals will be available to just, anybody who gets in the conversation can start talking about the different topics that we're going to present. So check it out. It's still growing, and it will be, it will be a continuous growing thing. It's not done. It's never going to be done. I just think it's important that we have information available to families and then also to support staff so that they can learn. And that is everything, Judy.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. I just really, my son's 25, and I wish I had heard this presentation when my son was 3, because that would have really helped so much. Really helped so much. All right, now we're going to turn to Stephen Hinkle. I wanted to let everybody know, I know folks are asking questions. We're going to take lots of questions after this. This is why we're so grateful that Amy and Darlene are speeding through their presentation so that you have time to ask them questions or any questions you may have about any topic related to self-determination. So now we're going to move to Stephen Hinkle. Stephen is on the board, was on the founding board of directors of Disability Voices United. He's also a PhD candidate at Chapman University in their special education department. And he's a self-advocate who has really written and does public speaking around the world about the importance of advocacy and inclusion. So Stephen, I'm wondering if you could tell us a bit about sort of what you think from a self-advocate's perspective is critically important in ensuring that children from the earliest age get the self-determination skills that they need to become sort of active adults and in charge of their own lives.
I think the first thing is we have to use first-person voice We have to let people have choices in life. We have to let people listen to what they need. It isn't always about what mom or dad wants. It's more about what direction does Bob or Eleanor or Lindsay or was it Brian or whatever want to take his life from this point forward, and really what's going to get them there in terms of support services and other programs and other things we might have through our education system, through our adult service system when they get there, and more, and what also happens outside of school as well, in terms of what does this look like from the perspective and really respecting what they want and give them a voice.
So thank you, that was great. So tell me a bit about when you were a child, did you participate in your own IEPs? Did you participate in your ICTs at the regional center? Like, what did you do to gain those kinds of skills?
Middle school, I did. I don't think they invited me much when I was in my elementary years, and I think that was a mistake. In those days, it was uncommon for the child to be there when they were young. That was just the practices in special ed in the 1980s at the time. And after all, special ed hasn't been around since 1976. So at first years, they didn't know what they were doing, essentially. But yes, I think it's very important that they go to the meetings, that they have a voice, that they specify some goals for themselves, that they decide what direction they want to take their next year in terms of their experience. And those kind of meetings translate very well into the transition age to person-centered planning, when people think about what careers do they want, what type of life do they want to have, who they want to live with, and what their social life wants to look like.
That's great. So I know you're getting your PhD in special education, and I'm wondering if you've had a chance to teach or to lecture to teachers, to special education teachers, or, I know you've spoken at CalTASH and you've spoken at CalABA, to the ABA therapist. What is the message that you try to get across to the professionals?
To many school districts around the country, including San Diego Unified. I presented to Pinellas in Florida. I presented to Rio Rancho in New Mexico. I presented to Tulsa Public Schools in Oklahoma. I presented to Project Choices, which was doing a lot with the Chicago Public Schools. I presented to a whole bunch of District 11 in Colorado.
So what is the message that you give when you present to these school districts?
Well, I tell them about inclusion, about diversity, about neurodiversity, about letting people have their pathways, that we need to make entire schools inclusive. And that is not one classroom in the back. That's every classroom, the gym, the auditoriums, the offices, the pools, the sports fields, the labs, the cafeteria, you name it. And really, it's about giving them a full experience at the academic level that they're at, and allow them to excel if they're good at something, and about also having access to those social opportunities as well.
Yeah, that social opportunities is something I've heard you talk about a lot. And the fact that when you were young, you didn't have the same social opportunities as children in the general ed programs. And so, we're here to talk about self-determination and people making their own choices. How do you think that how parents and professionals can look to incorporating people with disabilities into those social environments for young people?
It's a very complex thing, but to first of all, realize it's a lot more than just speech or ABA. I'm actually working on finishing my lit review, which has the real skill set, which often was not even in the research. It's so bad what I've been finding. But one of the things is to let them pick the activities they want, whether it be arts or theater or sports or maybe getting together with friends or going to parties or going into a school club or things like that, or doing things in the community. Think about what they want and then make sure they understand things like how to make friends, how to be a friend, and make sure they know the rec leisure, the movement, and the etiquette associated with the different activities. And each one's different. You really can't measure this on a Likert scale accurately. It's really got to be, because the skills needed to be an audience member at theater are going to be completely different than when you dine with a friend in the cafeteria, from when you play sports at recess to when you invite a friend over for your birthday party.
Exactly. I'm just wondering if Darlene or Amy, if you had any questions or comments about what Stephen's been talking about.
Stephen and I had the opportunity to talk last week, and Stephen, you were talking about, you had some really clear ideas about how to prepare students for the work world during their school experience. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yes, I'd like to share a little bit about the after high school. Is that okay, Judy?
Yes, for sure.
Okay. The first thing that you want to do, and it is, maybe I'll open my transition file here for a minute. Hold on for a second. Is to think about, the first thing I'm going to do is share screen here. Let me go to, there we go. Can you everybody see that?
Yes, we can.
The reality is the transition landscape. I'm going to give you just on a time schedule, but the transition landscape has changed the old model significantly, because more people with disabilities today are working out in the workforce. They're getting competitive integrated employment. They're going to college. They're doing a bunch of other things that are different from the old days of sheltered workshop and a group home model. So again, that model is going to the wrecking ball. So the key is, let me just jump ahead here. If I skip over some slides, it's because I have a long version that I'm just converting to short today. The reality is it's a lot more independence, a lot more autonomy, a lot more community life. It's about supported decision-making, and it's about thinking about where that person wants to go with their lives. And the new HCBS rules allow a lot more autonomy as well, like getting a key to your place and able to have food and visitors and be able to have your own schedule. And we're experiencing some things like the rents are going through the roof and stuff. So, and a lot of the entry-level jobs are down. So what we're really, let me go ahead here. So reality is a lot more autonomy, a lot more life, a lot more stuff. So when people plan for this, it's about choosing one's pathway in life and seeing, where does Greta want to take her life? Where does Bob want to take his life? Where does Joellen want to take her life? Where does Charlie want to take his life, for example, and see what it is that they want to be 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. And I'm going to take a little bit about things to think about. Does the person want to do any post-secondary ed, like college or learn a trade, for example? Do they want to, what skills does a person need for their independent living? Do they need some extra support for housing? Can they do it on their own? Do they need someone to teach them some of these skills, like cleaning and doing your laundry and cooking meals and stuff? It's also going to mean thinking about other things, like where do they want to live, like in the community? Do they want to live in a suburb? Do they want to live in the country? Do they want to be in this home state? Do they want to move to another state? What do they need to get around? Do they want to use the bus and the trolley? Do they want to learn to drive? And it also means more, starting at the high school level, we have to give people with disabilities a chance to try high school academics before presuming this person will never graduate. Because as a special ed student, when I was in there, I actually took AP Physics and AP Computer Science and math up to calculus and Japanese and trigonometry and chemistry and stagecraft as special ed students. So again, what we need to do is to think about what kind of careers do they want and stuff. And I'm going to jump ahead and really think about the pathway, because again, a lot of times whether you choose the diploma track or non-diploma track depends on what you're eligible for, funding wise, for the school district, as well as your eligibility for college or to get into a four-year college. So again, it really varies which way you go, because you have more funding to the schools if you go the non-diploma track. But on the other hand, success doesn't give you as much, but it gives you a lot more opportunity if you graduate and go on. So again, but community college, you don't necessarily have to be there. But I'm going to jump ahead to my ways of the workforce for a minute here. Give me a minute here to jump ahead.
While you're doing that, can I add in, Stephen?
Yes, go ahead, Amy. I'm there, but go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I know one thing we talked about last week too is that all of these examples that you're giving really support the case that students need a broad range of experiences when they're in school in order to support their ability to make informed choices about what they like and what they don't like, and to develop those interests and preferences, just like you described. And I think that that's really connected to this emphasis on self-determination.
And that's why I think that schools need to make some of their electives and arts and career technical and some of those classes inclusive, so that people can try things. Because I want to say that the retail sector is going through where we've historically have put people, because it's the easiest job to get, as going through a massive downsizing. When you look at the number of dead malls, you look at the number of store closures, leverage buyouts. So we have to do here is to start looking at what is a person's talents, what are their gifts, what are their strengths, What are their assets? What can they offer an employer? That's what you need to first write down. Everything this person is good at. What can that translate to in terms of a career? And to really look at talents rather than just say, oh, this job agency puts people at goodwill. If someone can make a living wage, that's a much better placement if they're capable. So we really need to look at what talents they have. What can they offer an employer? And the reality is that, again, not everybody's going to be able to pay the bills on SSI with the rents going through the roof. So for some people can live on that, but if they can do better, it's better to explore the best opportunities possible for a person and to look at diversification. It's okay to start entry level. There's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, think about when that person gets to be 30, 40, 50, 60 years old. Do they still want to be making $10 an hour at Walmart? Or do they want to someday be able to advance their career? So again, we have to factor that in and to start looking at what they have to offer. And then the next thing you want to do is make from that list, seek out every occupation that can use those skills across your workforce. Make another list of that. And then narrow it by determining what industries or career fields seem appealing to the person. Like if somebody's good at computers, do they want to be a computer graphics designer? Do they want to work in video games? Do they want to be an office person who does database work? Do they want to be a programmer, a network admin? If somebody's good with, on the other hand, with animals, do they want to be a farmer? Do they want to be a dog walker? Do they want to work in a veterinary clinic? Do they want to become a veterinarian? Do they want to become an animal trainer? Do they, those kind of things, to really look at what they're good at and where can that be used in the work. And I think if more employers and more job agencies and more things did things like this, we could have a much more diverse range of careers for people with disabilities that really take advantage of what they're good at and where they'd like to work in the workforce. And that's something that I think would be, and to focus on strengths. If, oh, they get so many things saying, oh, this kid's not good at stocking shelves. Maybe stocking shelves is not the best career for that person. If they'd rather be a teacher, and then to look at if they want to increase their education, to look at things like college or learn a trade or be vocational ROP. They're all viable options for people to learn more. And don't discourage people if their goal is high paying. Because I know people with this, I know some people with disabilities today who are, I've heard of some who are engineers, some who are scientists, some who are lawyers, some who are actors, some who are CEOs of companies now. So we really need to start looking at their talent and see what it takes to get there, even if it means going to college degree track or graduating high school with a real diploma or learning a trade or getting a certificate in something. And really need to look. Then the last thing I think is very important is when we go ahead, we often forget about the fact that overshield our adult rites of passage. And the transition today is going to mean people with this not ending the pipeline from from school to guardianship. And that may mean parents need to not shield when it means like their kid turns 18, let them have some of their adult rights. Let them teach them responsible decision making. It may mean like learning to do things that have been historically shielded, like voting, or learning to drive the car, or learning to go places on their own, or travel, or engaging in a dating relationship, or consenting to health care or decisions, or being able to sign a lease, or or buy a car, or do things that are contractual in their own name, or having learning to pay their bills. So it may mean accepting that this is going to be the new normal that we've historically have shielded from people with disabilities. And I think it's really, let me go ahead here. I think it also means learning how to do independent living on your own, like knowing how to clean or garden or do those kind of things, or get the supports for it and make your decisions. And the problem with staying on SSI is because of the limits are so low that people, the rents are so high, and a lot of times they need 3 or 4 times the rent to qualify for a mortgage, unless you get a voucher from housing authority, which there's a long waiting time for. And then it's not functional skills versus academics, it's the others. And I think I'll jump ahead here. It's very important to consider some other aspects of life here. Make sure that they get their support needs, their place. Think about if there's any community groups or organizations that person wants to fund. What do they like to do for fun? What do they like to do for exercise? What do they like to do for leisure? What do they like to do for their hobbies? Who do they want to live with? Do they someday want to date or get into a sexual relationship? I'm not soliciting anybody here, but I'm just mentioning that it's important to understand that that might be a goal for somebody going through transition, or someday to get married or start a family of their own. So really need to think about the fun side of life and what they like to do in their free time as well. And this can all be done through person-centered planning. It can all be done through self-determination. It can be done by you picking with a budget you get under what it would be under the traditional system, using that money to pick your own services. Like in my case, I'm getting my website redone. I'm gonna get some dating stuff. I'm gonna resume that once I get done with all these quals and all this dissertation proposal stuff this summer. I'm going to resume that.
So really, Stephen, I don't mean to interrupt, but it's 5:30 and I want to make sure that we have time, the last 30 minutes, to be able to take questions from the audience. So would you mind stopping sharing your screen? And I want to move into the Q&A because I'm sure there's a lot of people have questions for you. Yes. Okay. So
after all, I'll just share out. The last thing is just make sure you have a good career, a good life, and everything. And you can accomplish that through self-determination.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephen. All right, I'm going to unpin everybody so that we can look at the whole world and see all the folks, because that way I can see where the questions are. So I know a number of you have put questions in the chat, and we're going to have Ed monitor that, but you can also ask questions by going down. Usually it'll say something like reactions or something like that at the bottom of your screen, and choosing raise hand like I just did. So if any of you have any questions for any of our speakers or on any kind of issue related to self-determination, we would love to take them now for our last half hour. And first of all, thank you to Amy, Darlene, and Stephen. That was an amazing presentation. You can see there's a lot of demand for it because this is a very large turnout for us. This is great. So Sania, hi Sania. I'm going to ask you to unmute and ask your question. How are you?
I'm doing great, Judy. It's so good to see you.
Good to see you too.
And to be back into the loop of things.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm kind of a little bit more stable with the way that I'm approaching things now. I've learned a lot. And my question is for a few of your speakers, and mainly right now, Stephen, you just presented, and I was dying as you were scrolling to make your specific points. I really could benefit from your entire group of slides. And if I can study them on my own, I would greatly appreciate you if you can share it with me.
Yeah, I can do that.
I appreciate that. And my other question is for Darlene.
Yes.
I do have, I did go to your app, your page, and I realized that in order for me to take a better look at what's going on, I have to pay a monthly fee, but I'm not really clear on what you're providing. I do have two.
I totally get that. This is actually something my business partner and I have like talked about every day for the past 3 weeks because we don't like it either. So if you just go to the App Store, then you can see the app, like Google or Apple's, and just type in Go Kindred, you'll see the app there. And then you can see the app. You can download it for free. It's a weird glitch in this whole landing page thing.
I just put my slides in the chat box.
Thank you, Stephen. We appreciate
You'll get the full version, not the condensed version.
I'm not really sure how to access that, Judy, based upon my disability and also the lack of technology equipment. Is there any kind of way that you can possibly email it to me?
Yes. You know what we'll do, because this has been such a popular one, Ed, maybe we can take all 3 of the slideshows and get it up on our website, our self-determination interchange, and and we will send out to everybody the link for that so that you're getting all 3 on one website, okay?
I greatly appreciate it, and thank you, because let's see,
you can email me and I'll send it to you when I'm done with the presentation.
Okay, I will put my email address in the chat for you, sir. And Darlene, I really appreciate that, being able to do that, because I do have 2 nonverbal clients.
Oh yeah.
And I was really impressed with your PowerPoints as well, and as to everyone else's. And so thank you so much, Judy, for the opportunity to attend.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sania. Emma Via, did you have a question?
Yes, I do. I was just having to unmute myself. Thank you. I have an education background. So at first I was thinking, okay, I already know this stuff, but when they really connected it, and then at the very end, I'm like, wait a minute, I need to make a comment and then ask a question. My kiddo is 8 years old, and he's going through the process. What I'm noticing with self-determination is there seems to be, because what I've learned is I can't wait till he's 14, 16, 17 to start capitalizing on his strengths and his abilities. I need to start, 2 years ago, right? I needed to start now. And we've identified some strengths and some areas that we would love to develop and that he's very good at. Now, will he choose to do that for a career? We don't know. But we know he's good at it, so that he always has that plan, that backup plan, that he can be successful at it. And one of those is technology. But what I found with self-determination is and this is my personal experience, is that it seems to be a bit discriminatory for the ages. For example, we have a child that he's on the spectrum, so there is scatter skills. But he has a strength that we can capitalize on. But because he's 8, they're wanting to call it a hobby, as opposed to, you know what, if we wait till he's 14, his peers have outgrown, he's already way behind. We need to have him competitive with his peers when he's 14. Now is the time to develop it. He's going to need more practice, more support, but this is an area where he can be successful. He can be one of those people that excels if he has it. So I think for me, the big question is, how do we address that when clearly we see other people, even other actors or young adults, that it's considered services, but for a younger one, they're wanting to call it a hobby. The services that one would get, right? It's age discriminatory. It's not about the items, it's age discriminatory.
Yeah.
So can you because I think your guest really pointed out something very, very critical. We cannot wait till our kiddos are there. We need to address it right away and begin to build those skill sets, the communication skill sets, the talent skill sets, whatever it is, so we can start directing them into their strengths, and then they can choose, right, what they want to, how they want to use it. But if they don't have the support early on, they're going to always be at a disadvantage. The gap will never close.
Yeah. Thank you, Emma, for that question. Darlene, Amy, Stephen, who
I'd
wants
like to join in on this.
Go ahead,
I think the first thing you want to do is if you still have money in your self-determination budget, you can probably spend it on some of those things, even though you'll only be allocated on what you get on traditional for dollars. But if you have some left, chances are you can probably use it for those things. And it's the other thing is, you might be able to appeal this as an unmet need.
Thank you. Thanks, Stephen. Darlene, do you want to?
Well, I just kind of, this thought came when Stephen was speaking, and it kind of resonates here. I think that some of this, and I don't know, Amy, what you think about this, but it's because we have this mentality that everything's functional. Everything has to be functional. And that functional means basic living skills. Okay. But basic living skills for me, I could pay for people to do my basic living skills for me. Functional for me is being able to use my computer and do my typing and my writing and my Zooming and all of these kinds of things. That's what's functional for me. So this whole idea of functional lifestyle, it makes it so that we don't do the paths that Stephen's talking about, because we don't think about it. And really many families that I know, you guys are working on the functional stuff at home already. You don't need somebody to work on the functional stuff at school. You got that covered. School is school, and you can't recreate school at home. So take those opportunities. And I think that's where we have to start redirecting our educational people to stop making it so that your 8-year-old is working on functional curriculum. Even your 14-year-old, Amy.
Not to mean to interrupt, but maybe I didn't clarify. No, it's not at the school level. It's in the self-determination program.
No, but it's the same. It's the same mentality. It's the same mentality. It's people functional.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Amy.
I think my comment is kind of pushing Emma past where your question was, because, I'm a school person. I'm not, I think that I'm not the best person to answer a question about regional center, but I think that kind of in line with your question is really about beyond how to spend self-determination funds, but how to use that interest that your child has in technology, or not just interest, but strength in technology, to actually build self-determination skills. So I think that that's where I'm really trying to push in terms of our work with schools and educators, is we know what that interest and strength is. Now, how do we use that to involve the student in setting their own goals, right? So how can they set a goal for something they love to do for technology and make a plan, and work towards that goal and evaluate their progress. That's how we start to teach people to set their own goals.
Mm-hmm.
How do they use that strength to advocate, to maybe build technology into other parts of their curriculum at school? So I think that kind of thinking about that list of self-determination skills and thinking about how do we connect those strengths and interests as a way to leverage access and practice to those skills that are really going to be, you know, beyond the strength and technology. It's really about how can I be a driver in my life, right? So I can have a great strength and yet not have the skills to really take ownership of that and use that. And to me, that is the most functional skill, is being able to feel that, that sense of ownership.
Thank you, Amy. And just a quick reminder from our interpreters that we want everyone to finish speaking before the next person talks, because it's hard for them to be able to interpret when they're hearing two voices. So thank you. Lulu, what would you like to ask? Lulu A, are you there? There you go. Oh. Lulu, can you unmute?
Sí, ya, pero no, me está cerrando otra vez. Mi pregunta es, ¿cuáles meses se determinan para tomar el presupuesto? Debido a que el centro regional, cuando se solicita, no lo da, entonces ellos quieren que hasta que esté uno dentro de autodeterminación, hasta que vaya un proceso donde se haya entregado el plan centrado y todo esto para dar para dar lo que es el presupuesto. Entonces, ¿cuáles meses son los que se deberían de tomar en cuenta para esto?
So that is not true. You do not need to deliver a person-centered plan before getting your budget. That is absolutely not true. So you should ask for the budget while you are getting your, remember, you're not asking them to deliver the final budget. You're asking them to deliver the amount of money you've spent in the last 12 months. And that date starts from the day you ask for your budget. So if you ask today, then they'd be looking at, you know, May of 2021 to May of 2022 and how much you spent in that 12-month period. They should be able to give that to you anytime, whether you're in the self-determination program or not. And if your service coordinator refuses to give you that information, then you should ask to speak to their supervisor. And if they refuse to give you that information, ask to speak to the head of your self-determination program at your regional center. They're called a participant choice specialist. And if they don't give it to you either, then I would suggest reaching out to the self-determination program ombuds person. But the thing is that you really want to start your person-centered planning process at the same time that you're working on your budget. They shouldn't be separate things happening. They should be happening at the same time. So you should be working on both of them at the same time, Lulu. I also wanted to answer a question that I saw a long time ago in the chat, which was that somebody at a regional center was saying that self-determination is only for adults and not for children. That is absolutely not true. There are many, many children in the self-determination program. The only qualification for children is that if you are under the age of 3, you must be what's called Lantern Act eligible. What that means is that you have to be considered a long-term client at the regional center and not just an early start. So babies 0 through 3 years old who have Down syndrome are already eligible for regional center services. It's some babies with autism and intellectual disabilities may be eligible a little bit older, more like 3 years old. But any child 3 and above who receives regional center services definitely is eligible to be in the self-determination program. And that makes my head want to explode when I hear things like that. Go ahead, Lisa Walker.
Okay, so I want to share two things at the regional center level and at school level. So first, school level, I know we had a nice talk with everyone, but from the grassroots, my child is not even in an inclusion setting. She is 100% segregated. She's 10th grade, and that's how it is. And we talk about the goals, and goals are driven by the present level. And present level is set by school district through their assessment. Whether you agree or not, they're the one who's setting the goals, and they're the one who's setting the present level. So in order for me to even go with my goals, school has to approve it. So therefore, I am even fighting for 20-30% inclusion. And when the inclusion happens, they are back of the school. So it's not a true inclusion. So it doesn't matter if I show the presentation, the goals. I even have a one-pager. Nothing changed. If a school said, okay, I'm not going to accept this. I'm not going to accept the doctors from the Stanford's dyslexia. We're just not going to provide the services to you. Take us to hearing. And with a family member, taking the school to hearing is a very extremely ordeal for family. So then you have to decide, okay, you have a school, you have a regional center, you have a child with a special need, you need a OT, PT, speech, ABA therapy, tutor. What do you do? It's just like you spread too thin. Next thing you know, you're getting sick, you're not taking care of yourself because you're having to deal with all these areas, right? Because it's just coming down on you like snowball. And I just want to park it there. And that's what's happening at grassroots. And we talk about this, but until someone could hold our hands to help us, we as a family member don't know what to do, right? Because we don't have a PhD or MD behind us or the law degree behind us. And whenever we go to IEP, it's 20 staff, 20 people in school side versus you or someone else, but on the other side, the numbers are just extremely upside down. So I want to park it there. I want everybody to understand that. I mean, I hear this, I hear you guys, and that's how it's supposed to be, but it's not how it is. And so I want everybody to understand this. Unless we need somebody who could help and hold our hand and say, this is what you do, right? We don't have that person to go to. Everywhere we go and they get grants to help us, they just do not take it because it's too difficult. It's too time consuming. They don't want to create an enemy with the school district because the school district is powerful, right? And state cannot even go against the school, right? Their lawyer, school district lawyer is state lawyer. How do you compete with that, right? And
Can
then
I jump in?
So Lisa, hold on. Thank you so much. I want to let you know that we hear you, we feel you. I think first I'm going to go to Amy, who teaches.
Can I just say one thing for SDP? I am so sorry.
That's okay.
Second year SDP, and when you have FMS drop you because regional center is micromanaging, so you are in SDP, but you don't have an FMS. And then you were told that, yeah, there is another FMS, but it's not a co-employer model, it's a full employer model. So you're paying 25%. You don't have that kind of budget. And then you're trying to find the independent facilitator who no one wants to take your case because it is time consuming. Everything is boiling down to how much money am I gonna make? Am I gonna spend more time helping you? And then therefore, I'm not gonna take your case. You're calling all this independent facilitator and no one is taking your case because they don't wanna create an enemy with the regional center because that's where they make money, $2,500. What does the client has to do? Because I've called everywhere. No one can help me. Call the ombudsman. No one can help. So what do we do? What? I don't know. Can you help? I just need somebody to help.
Can I jump in for a minute?
Yeah, go ahead, Stephen.
First of all, I can relate to your story a lot. My mom had to go through something just like yours. I'm speaking this from the heart. It sounds like, first of all, from the school districts was not doing what they're supposed to do. They're definitely violating the IDEA. And one of the things I'd recommend is getting an advocate and getting a special ed lawyer, or it really is, because under the law, it's supposed to be least restrictive environment. And I would quote that your next time. And I also would consider maybe having your child in the room at the next IEP meeting and calling it an emergency one, that they're not doing what they're supposed to do. Because usually and pick the team, pick the teacher, pick who you want at the meeting if you can. Yes, there has to be certain people there, but you can invite anyone else you want. So do it that way. The next thing is with SDP, yes, it's very confusing and it's very sad. It has to be, but certainly what we can people can work on navigating, hopefully, to make things easier for you if you can get them to do that. With the FMS, I've heard different things about different ones, and if needed, I'd switch. I do different things to get, and certainly some things are expensive out there, but I would certainly stand up for your rights. And it sounds also like that system needs some professional development badly. And please don't hesitate to contact me if you need. So I'd be willing to do some work on the phone. I will let Amy join in if she wants to add anything.
Thanks. And I know that there's 2 more people who are waiting who have questions too. I just wanted to say to Lisa that I want to recognize, so I do a lot of collaboration with families, and recognize that sometimes there's this huge gap between practice in the field and what families and individuals with disabilities are experiencing in schools, and kind of what we're setting out as our goals to strive for. And I'm acutely aware of that, and how painful it can be for families to hear about this vision that is sometimes so far from the reality. I think it's very unfair that families often have to rely on advocates and lawyers to accomplish things that are, as Stephen said, your rights. I always encourage for starting with family allies and people that, it's just not fair for it to be a financial burden for families to do that. And so looking at those family allies, that I know that there's tons of parents on this call here who are really experienced and have fought these same battles. You're part of a nationwide community of parents who are doing this. And I think that any advocate really starts by recommending prioritizing. So there's a lot of things that are going wrong in your situation. And I think really starting to narrow down and prioritize. Of course, I'm going to say, self-determinate, like looking at, how can we build in opportunities for the student to start to have more control within the environment that they're currently in, while you're still advocating for more access to general education, but really looking at every IEP as an opportunity to prioritize a couple things that you're going to really push for, and then building in your allies with other families and people who can come to those meetings with you, who really are there just as a support and helping to back you up in making those decisions about those things to narrow down.
Thank you, Amy. We only have a few minutes left because we are stopping at exactly 6. So I'm going to ask Sandra to unmute.
This has been fabulous. I'm kind of disgusted that my son graduated 11 years ago with spending his career in full inclusion, and that it's not the first placement for every student, but that's not my question. I have heard from 7 of my 12 regional centers, I stopped emailing the others, that DDS has directed them to not provide any rate increases to self-determination participants. And my clients using traditional vendors are getting the rate increases, but they don't have a budget increase and they're going to run out of money. What do we do, Judy?
Yes, it is at the top of my priority list. I have been advocating with DDS about this. And I believe that so DDS has not made a decision. Let me tell everyone, it's not like DDS has said we are not going to get the rate increases. What they've said is they're looking at it. If they make a decision in the next few weeks or in the next month that people in the self-determination program do not get the same rates as basically it means our rates are frozen in time, because the rates are going up. The rates went up on April 1st and they're going to go up again, highly likely to go up again on July 1st, which means if you have already entered the self-determination program, your rates were frozen in time. And that is unacceptable. So I believe, and I've already spoken to Disability Rights California about a potential lawsuit against whether it's regional centers or DDS about treating people in the self-determination program differently than they treat people in the traditional system. And I'm hoping it will not get to that point. But believe me, it is at the top of my advocacy that we are working on. I promise.
Thank you. I will join a class action if there is one.
Thank you. Thank you. So we only have 2 minutes left. And so I apologize. We have to let our interpreters go at exactly 6. And I also have to go at exactly 6 today. So I just want to spend a minute and thank Dr. Amy Hanreddy from Cal State Northridge, Darlene Hanson from everywhere, including DBU, and Stephen Hinkle from DBU and Chapman University. And I want to thank everyone. We will be back in a couple of weeks with another SDP Connect. In the meantime, I really hope that everyone stays safe out there and that you remember that COVID is not gone, and that I know more people now who have COVID than I've ever known in my life. So please stay safe. And that we will be in touch with you about the fair hearing bill that we have, because it's so important to get everybody's support for our fair hearing bill. So thank you, everybody. We'll see you in a couple of weeks, and take care. And thank you, Amy, Darlene, and Stephen.
Thank you.
Thanks.